So welcome you all to Let's Talk About Debt, baby. If you're kind of old school, what this sort of in a reference to. And I'm very excited that all of y'all are out for this. It really definitely means a lot to me that folks came on out. So um, I'm sorry if you're having technical issues. I see people sort of dipping in and out. But I'm glad that the is working for some people. If it's all good for you in the chat, let me know. If it's not, um, I'm sorry about that. I think I'm gonna have to invest in Zoom. But I was not totally expecting all this craziness. But thank you for bearing with me. So we're gonna get started on the presentation now. Welcome. So I'm Danny Tejada, and I run the company, founded the company called We Go to College LLC. And I wanted to talk a little bit about myself, talk a little bit about my goals with this company. So I'm a first generation college student, grew up in New York City, East New York, Brooklyn, very rough neighborhood. Grew up in poverty, family on public assistance. Was the oldest of three, had to grow up pretty fast to be there for my siblings. And for me, it was definitely very, very tough, living in public housing, being the oldest of three, having to grow up pretty fast. And also as well, um, uh, sort of being the first, right? Because my parents didn't graduate high school, obviously didn't go on to college. So I was the first to graduate high school, or first to graduate college as well. And if you're a first generation student as well, then you can see sort of like how that sends a ripple effect all throughout your family. How being the first really changes things a lot. Just a little quick story. My sister, who is third in line of the siblings, the last in line of the siblings, all are the same people who didn't want me to go away to college because they thought it was too expensive, wasn't going to be affordable, et cetera, et cetera, were the same people who pushed her to go to school, to push her to go away because I was successful and because I was able to graduate with no debt, But one thing I always try to tell my students is to have something like that, to graduate with very little debt or no debt, you got to be a hustler. There's things that you have to do to make that happen for yourself. I wasn't a top of the class student. Third in the class, 85 average out of 100 in New York City. Like SATs around the 900s. But thankfully, being a New York State student, there were a lot of opportunities for students, low-income students like me. And I was able to graduate with no loans at all because of a program that I was in, because of outside scholarships that I won, and because of being an RA. So for me, I've been a college counselor for about 8 years now. And I started this company, We Go to College. It's not your traditional independent educational consultant working one-on-one with families. Although I do that, my primary focus is helping high schools and CBOs with their college counseling programs. Because for me, I think very often about a student just like me. If I wasn't lucky, if I wasn't at the right place at the right time, having to go into an upper bound program because my high school was a part of their portfolio, who knows what I would be, right? I don't think I would have went away if I wasn't a part of that upper bound program. I don't think I would have graduated with very little debt if it wasn't for that upper bound program lighting that fuel under me, because college wasn't a conversation happening in my home at all. I legitimately thought when I was in high school that when I entered the ninth grade, high school was the end all be all. So I focus my company a lot on helping your organization, helping your high school with professional development like this, and also doing student workshops, large scale student workshops. Currently, I work with two Upper Brown programs here in St. Louis. Um, and also, as well, I do help those programs um, coach a little bit about their college counseling as well, because I want to see high schools, public high schools, and community-based organizations thrive. When I came here to St. Louis, working at a private school, I still wanted to be able to have that connections to CBOs, to public high schools. So I always try my best to be able to make that happen. So, if you think by the end of this presentation you want a link about how it can help you, your organization, your high school, help your counselors, let's talk. So, why talk about that? If you know me on Facebook and Twitter, I'm a huge wrestling fan. One of my things is wrestling gifs. But don't worry, there ain't too many wrestling gifs here. I only put them where I thought they were kind of really impactful. And for me, we talk a lot about college being a ladder, right? Climbing up the social economic ladder. It's the chance of upward mobility, right? And I think college debt is the biggest barrier to upward mobility because of trying to always keep up with the costs, the monthly loan payments. If a student is gapped in their tuition, if their parents have a parent plus loan, so you could be trying to climb the ladder, like in this wrestling match here, trying to get that briefcase to get the contract to be the top dog. But next thing you know, something like that, you see that there on the ladder, throwing you off onto the other ladder, having to start all over. I think we focus too much on income, just how much someone is making, rather than all of the expenses that one has to take care of to have an actual picture if one has really climbed up the social economic ladder. So since the beginning of my career, it's always been important for 8 years ago, always been important to me to talk to students about financial aid, to talk about debt and what have you. I remember when I had my first job, and I had a supervisor who was very supportive of, me being innovative, me taking part in organizations like College Action Consortium in New York, where I was on the board at one point. But there was, one thing I really had trouble with her. She had this big idea that students should borrow as much as they want to go to their dream school. And for me, having come from a life of nothing, and having seen friends talk a lot about their debt and how it's preventing them from starting families, it's preventing them from enjoying life, period. I've always made it a habit to have those concrete conversations with students and families. And I know they could be uncomfortable, but I think these are conversations that need to be had if we really want to help, more particularly low-income students, climb the socioeconomic ladder. So one key thing that I found recently, like literally days after I announced this workshop, is these various studies that came out from. Give me a second here, because my notes is not showing up here, but thankfully I emailed them to myself. So the following data comes from educationdata.org, right? And I found this to be so fascinating because I haven't really seen anything specifically like this. We hear very much about total student debt and what have you, but I think it's very jarring when you see, these bars here for brown students, black students, multiracial, Asian, et cetera, to see what the total amount for undergrad is. One thing I always talk to students about is if you know you want to go to graduate school one day, you want to be a lawyer, doctor, stuff like that, then you definitely need to hone on how much you're borrowing in undergrad. I'm sure some of you might have gone to law school and you might have debt of 100,000 yourself from law school alone. So I think that that's the thing that's key is just sort of helping students realize the bigger picture of things. I think we focus too much on asking students what they want to major in rather than asking them what kind of life do they want. That's the question we need to start asking students. What kind of life do you want? What do you envision yourself to be? Some interesting things about this data is that Black college students owe an average of 25,000 more in student loan debt than white college graduates, and Black bachelor degree holders have an average of 52,000 in student loan debt. Over 50% of Black student borrowers report their net worth as being less than what they owe in student loan debt. 4 years after graduation, 48% of Black students owe an average of 2.5 more than what they borrow. After the same period, 83% of white students owe 12% less than what they borrowed. So, to me as well, when we get students looking at colleges, we also got to have concrete conversations too about job prospects, be able to pay this debt back, having a manageable debt load. I think the most interesting thing about this data, and when I post it up on my blog, I'll include the links to these sources as well. And all of you will also get the slides because there's some links in here as well, is we also got to talk to students about, you go to college to grow as an adult, to interact with people, network, discover yourself, et cetera. But at the end of the day, you still need to come out with a job. You still need to come out with a career. And I feel like that was sort of the one piece that was missing for me when I was in high school, because I was just so focused on my hip hop culture club, being on the radio for 4 years. I thought I was going to be an A&R mixtape DJ, and I was going pretty far with it. This is the MySpace days, so it was making a lot of things possible. But here I am, right, being a college counselor because, college counseling saved my life. But I'll say this too. It took me 1 whole year after I graduated to get a full-time job. And I have been trying over and over again, putting out my resume. And it wasn't until like my mentor in college had me sort of reimagine my resume into a narrative-based resume. And that's when I started to get more callbacks. And of course, when I was a senior in college, that's when I decided I wanted to be a college counselor. There's so many things I wanted to be: actor, I wanted to be video game programmer, et cetera. But I wanted to be just like the heroes who, quite frankly, I say saved my life. You know what I mean? Because I literally came from nothing, came from a lot of drama, came from a lot of suffering, and always being in that program was a saving grace for me. So, we got to talk really hard-hitting numbers about job prospects. And it took 4 years after I graduated college to become a college counselor, because I just wasn't really getting interviews and stuff like that, and it used to bother me sometimes when I would enter the college counseling field and mix and mingle with people, and I'm like, man, I could have been in 4 years in this now, but because of so much that I learned and the connections that I make with people in the industry and the genuine friends that I have, that I feel very good about it now these days. Here's another one from also the same study from educationdata.org. So monthly student loan payments by race. So some interesting things here to note about this data here that you see. 33% of Hispanic student borrowers say they are putting off marriage due to their student loan debt. 37% of Hispanic borrowers delay having children due to debt. At 46%, Black student borrowers were the most likely to put off buying a home. At 43%, Black in debt student borrowers are also more likely to report having to work more than what they prefer. Um, Hispanic students are the second most likely to borrow high amounts from private sources. 69.4% of Hispanics who use private loans borrow 40,000 or more. 6.8 of Black students who borrow from private organizations borrow 40,000 or more. So one thing is, and Maya, I will, include send the resources after to this whole study, so you can see it for yourself. I remember going through my 8-year career and always telling myself, and I always tell students, if because I work with mostly low-income students throughout my career, if it gets to a point where you have to consider taking out private loans, then that's probably not the school for you. And we need to start looking at some more affordable options. So, moving right along here, the next important thing that I thought was very amazing and sort of like, I would say, really revolutionary, and I'm surprised that us in our industry don't really talk about this that much, which is the Department of Education releasing data on the Parent Plus loan for the first time ever. And I will also link to that as well, because it's definitely some traumatizing stuff to see what the average Parent Plus loan is for low-income students, Pell eligible students, for students in general, is definitely some shocking stuff. So I got this chart here from the Urban Institute, and you can see here, if you look very closely, the majority of Black parents who are taking out the Parent Plus loan are of low income, and the same with Hispanic as well. So I'll tell you this right now. The only time ever in my career that a student has taken out a Parent Plus, well, the parent has taken out the Parent Plus loan was only once. And of course, that's always been a conversation that came up all throughout my career. And I would sit down and have serious conversations with students and families as to what that loan meant, and if they could even get it because of their credit, and if they could afford the monthly payment, which starts right away. So there's definitely been times where I talk students and families out of making bad financial aid decisions, And the one student who did take out a Parent Plus loan, he had a very confusing immigration status, and taking out the Parent Plus loan was his only chance to be able to afford school, essentially. So shocking stuff. I'll send you that Parent Plus loan data as well. So prevention is key to something what I am calling, and I found this from a research paper that came out a couple of years ago, college finance literacy. So in our college counseling, we need to weave in college finance literacy in all that we do, from the moment that we first have a meeting with a student about their prospects, their hopes, their dreams, their lists, and even their families as well, to when they get the financial aid package and trying to make that final decision by May 1st. So prevention is key because it helps prevent a lot of heartbreaks, right? I'm sure some of you have been there as well, where you had to talk to students who were devastated by being gapped by massive amounts. I remember one time when I was working with a middle-class family in a charter school out in Brooklyn, I got the student way invested in a highly objective school in Massachusetts. And she got in. Um, she had to do the CSS profile. First she went to diversity flying, and it took a little bit of convincing to get her to apply to the diversity flying, because for some places it could be a bit burdensome for a student to have to write an essay to be able to go on these trips. But did it work with her on her essay? She got on to the trip, and she went, came back, loved it, had a T-shirt and everything, and I'm like, boom, here we go. My job is probably almost done here. And she applied to early decision, got in, and the gap was so huge. Um, and I still have the financial aid package because I collect them over time, put them in Excel sheets, have them anonymously. Um, so if you're ever curious, sort of like what did that situation specifically look like, um, I definitely had to, first of all, I saw the financial aid package. My mind was boggled. Um, and of course, I know that each of these rejected institutions do things differently in terms of how they use the CSS profile information. Um, so this family, owned the home that they live in, didn't have any other assets, major assets, or weren't hiding money anywhere or anything like that. And when I called the financial aid office, and usually I'll be honest, whenever I called the financial aid office, most of the time it's been very like intimidating. It's been very scary, and very often was I felt like I was being talked down to, like I didn't know what I was talking about. And I could only imagine how they talk to our students and families. So, for me, seeing how there was really no way that the school wasn't going to budge, that was honestly the first time ever in my career, another first, where a student backed out of an early decision agreement because it simply was not affordable for the family. And the mom, believe it or not, the mom was trying to, she was pondering, like trying to figure out like how to make it work. And then for me, I could not, in good conscience, um, allow that to happen. Right? Yeah, I could have this school on my resume and look good to potential employers, but I care more about the students ascending the economic ladder. That's more important to me than any accolades or anything I could have on my resume. So I sat down with the parent, sat down with the student, and showed them my breakdown from the Excel sheet that I had created, been using for a couple of years now. At what the gap would look like for that first year, every year after that, what the total debt was, and in having a serious conversation about what this debt would mean to the family if they were to take it on, they decided to back away. And it definitely was tough to have that conversation with that student. And especially when you have a student invest so much in your school, whether they go into apply early decision, et cetera, and then it doesn't work out, right? Um, and for me, it's tough to get students to consider otherwise, you know. But luckily, she found a SUNY college that she really loved a lot, and was definitely a far more affordable um, to for the family. So prevention is key, right? Building that list, right? This link here to on this PowerPoint um, will show you sort of what I'll bring it up here real quick. Well, how do I switch things here? Oh, I gotta switch this tab instead. Okay. I'm gonna show you what that data is, and it might be kind of familiar to some of you. Let me take a look here. No, it's not that one. It is. I thought I had it pulled up. Um, I'm gonna have to share my whole screen because this I don't know what what is going on. My whole window. So that's fine. But here it is right here. So you probably seen this before. Um, and I love this resource that Jeannie Klein and Jeff Levy put together. Really giving an idea of where the full need schools are and merit aid as well. So I like to go over this with students in terms of assembling their list. Um, and one other one that I have students look over too is the school's net price calculator, and I like to sort of tell them, make sure you take that with a grain of salt because a lot of these net price calculators are outdated from what I saw by a couple of years, but it at least gives students an idea. And another thing too, having students look at the average student debt and the parent debt and the starting salaries at different schools. College scorecard, I can't believe we aren't talking about college scorecard enough in our industry. If it loads here, there it goes. It really gives students and families a lot of power and knowledge of what to look forward to in terms of debt, right? So let's look up a random school here so you can sort of see what it would look like, right? You know what comes to my mind? Sarah Lawrence, which the one of the most expensive schools in the nation, right? In Bronxville. Very interesting school. First time I came across students having their own majors and stuff like that. So college scorecard, look it up, right? You go to the financial aid and that data. You can see what the typical monthly loan might look like, what the repayment rate, and then I think this part here is very important. 2 years out after a student graduates, are they making progress on their loan? Are they paying in full? Are they not making progress? Did they defer it, et cetera, et cetera? Did they default? These are key things that I think our students and families need to know. We talk a lot about college being an investment, and that needs to, that sort of that piece, the loan piece. Are you paying back your loan? I think is a great testament to how the student is doing after school. If they get that bachelor's degree, what's going on after with them, right? So you got to make sure. Sometimes I know this is easy to miss, this financial aid and debt. You got to do this little drop down menu to get the Parent Plus loan. And you can see here at Sarah Lawrence College that the debt average medium debt is over 52,000, right? And the typical monthly payment 565, right? You have 5 to 15% of parents borrowing that loan. So stuff like this is very key to show to parents, to ask them, all right, this is the typical monthly loan, right? Do you think your family can afford that as soon as your child starts? And can they sustain that every single year while the child's in school? So critical questions, very key questions. And outside scholarships, I can't, harp it enough. I always try to preach the gospel of outside scholarships to my students. And it's always been tough to get them in a routine of getting used to do it. So I created, and this will also be in the resource here, very simple scholarship tracker for students. So you welcome to, when you click the link, make sure you click file, make a copy, so students can, in the junior year, at the very least, start to keep track of scholarships. And if they happen to find one that's only for seniors, they could plug it on here and then come back to it later. Um, and and then of course, you probably know a lot about this scholarship website here. Really loads of information. I like to tell students, take the weekend to go through this, to go through any other scholarship resources. Not that you have to apply now, but use the scholarship tracker to plan out when you're going to apply for different scholarships. So, whew, a lot of stuff, right? Now, when we reach the stage of students being accepted and then get the financial aid packages, assessing that stuff, right? Somewhere on, I can't remember if it was the NACAC listserv or one of the Facebook groups and what have you, I came across this worksheet, and of course I have my own personal one, where it allows students and families to plug in cost of attendance to, and it even goes over the indirect expenses, which I love a lot too. And I think a lot of students and families don't think about the indirect expenses, the grants, scholarships, outside scholarships, loans, plugging all this stuff in. And of course, this only gives you just the first year, but theoretically, even though the loans are going to be a little bit more, because I'm sure as a student goes on in their college career, they're able to borrow a little bit more from the federal student loans. So you can sort of inflate this first year number times 4, inflate it a little bit to try to give students a picture of what their financial aid packages would look like between different schools. And then what I also do with students too is I like to go over this loan simulator, right? They do this during, you've probably seen this. They do this during their loan training or intro, whatever I forgot what it's called exactly, but there's a version of this that they do. But I think because of the fact that a lot of them do it on their own, I think I've only seen it twice in my career, to see a student do the loan intro meeting process training, whatever it's called. That I'm not sure if they're actually thinking about and digesting the information that's a part of that meeting. So I like to go over the loan simulator with students and families to give them an idea of how much it would take them to pay off their loans theoretically, on average in the ideal world in 10 years, right? And the great thing about the loan simulator is that it links up to college scorecard. So let's say, for instance, a student is interested in a certain major. With the college scorecard information embedded into the loan simulator, is able to use the income data as well to sort of like give a picture of what the monthly loan payment might look like, what you think you could afford, et cetera, and what have you. And I think it's key to let students know that and show them for real that these loans are no joke, and especially parents too. This loan simulator also does the Parent Plus loan as well. And then one thing I discovered when I moved to St. Louis was a cost of living calculator. Now, I had no idea about this, when because of course, obviously, my parents never talked so much about negotiating and cost of living and stuff like that. That's one thing that happens a lot with a lot of the students that we serve. Like parents don't talk to students about what it actually costs to live, right? And I think it's really up to us to show those students that. of course, I think doing a cost of living calculator is the best way to do that. You know, so you and this will also be linked in the PowerPoint as well, and you can plug in the city that they live in, um, and they're able to see for themselves, well, what is it like to actually live every single day, um, in whatever city they're from. You know, right now I'm in St. Louis, right? So medium rent, electricity bill, and which can get that kind of high here in St. Louis. That was a shocker to me coming from New York, never having paid electricity before. Um, Phone bill, if they're getting a phone that they put on layaway, right? Which typically a lot of people do. Um, Gas, how much, the cost of food is in a particular city, right? Doctor visits, which is something students also need to think about as well. And then, of course, you know, there are other associated things that students need to think about, as well as really, what I think is the cost of living, in general. And, if you're ever curious, look up New York and be prepared to be scared. But I never realized, I knew New York was expensive, but man, I never knew how bad it was until I looked at the cost of living calculator and compared it to St. Louis. Um, Now, so it's the key thing is doing all these different things with students. It helps to realize, it helps them think about life after college, which I think also needs to be our road too. It can't just stop at applying. We have to do our best to prepare our students for the future, especially if they're low income, to actually climb out of poverty. Um, so here's another wrestling gif, right? Is the math mathing? Is it making sense? Take the monthly income, subtract the rent, the federal student loans, the car, if you're having a car, gas, groceries, food, hanging out, internet, light, heat, cell, entertainment, the streaming services, grooming, haircut, house items, and regulatory health things, going to the pharmacy, going to the doctor, stuff like that, you know, and notice how savings is even on there, right? Um, Notice how vacationing isn't even on there, you know? So it's very key that we help students plan for their future and think about their future. And like I said before, ask them what kind of future do they want. Um, Now, I'll say this too, you throw all this at them. Of course, at the end of the day, it's their choice, is the parents' choice. All you can do is give them the info. Now, um, I always say that, you know, students and families, especially, and having learned this a lot in my career, they don't know what they don't know, right? Um, Information is king. And we always got to be innovating. We always got to be learning from one another. We always got to be going out to conferences, coming out to things like this. So props to you to coming out things like this. And I hope this was very helpful to you. But just know, at the end of the day, it could be very hard. It's definitely always hard for me in the beginning of my career to keep your job and your house life separate. Because at the end of the day, you got to make sure that you take care of yourself. You can't let the choices and the consequences of the students and families cloud your mind. You know, the way I live with myself every single day is I gave them the information, and it was their choice to make. From that point, and I think it's a real testament that I only had one student have to take out Parent Plus loan. I only had one student back out of early decision agreement. Um, the only time I got actually think about when it comes to low income students, a student taking out a significant gap, well, significant to that family, was $6,000 at a SUNY school. But after talking to the family and what have you, they were able to make it work. She graduated um, last year. Yeah, she graduated last year. I remember seeing her photos. We still connected on social media and what have you. Um, but the key thing is that you know when you give the information, it brings down that average debt. It sort of actually brings about real upward mobility. And you also have to live with the fact too that you're not going to be able to see the results at the end of the day. You the student graduates from your high school, from your CBO, or what have you, and you may never ever see them again, right? You might not connect with them on social media and stuff like that. But you have to learn how to live with the fact that you did the right thing in the right moment at the right time. You know, so keep that in mind. Now, uh, I like to go forth with any questions that you think you might have. Let me bring up the slide again here. Boom. Um, Now, if you want to connect with me, why is it not showing up? Oh, there it is. Okay. If you want to connect with me on Twitter, be forewarned, I talk a lot about wrestling on there. But I do talk about our industry too. Follow me on Council Tejada. Instagram is definitely more. It's definitely pretty much our industry talk. Um, and right now, I don't know if you know, maybe you do know, because some of you are accept. I still don't have a full time job. So if you are you want me to come out to your organization to present to your high school, present to your counselors, present to your CBOs, to your students, hit me up. And if you got a full time job gig, let's talk. And then if you find all this information to be helpful, feel free to donate whatever you can to my Belmont Cash App at Consular Tejada. And if you have any additional questions that you don't necessarily get to ask here, uh, or if you want to remain in touch or anything like that, feel free to hit up my email as well. And then also hit me up on my LinkedIn. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat if you have any questions. Thank you, Courtney. Interest counseling. That's what it's called. Definitely will be sharing the spreadsheet. Let's see here. Courtney said, I also recommend using College Board to see average private loans, including the total borrowed for schools that choose to report, as well as average merit aid, if merit is offered, and then the common data set as well. And yes, Courtney, you're right. You definitely want to use the federal student loan averages in college scorecard. But I do think the Parent Plus loan is the information on Parent Plus loan in college scorecard is so key, vital, and golden. I'm going back here, and good point about colleges saying they meet full need, but aren't necessarily full need blind. I forgot the correct term. I was just talking to friends the other day. I'm trying to be more conscious, and I see a couple of hands raised. I'm definitely gonna get to you guys. I just want to get back to the through the comments real quick. And yeah, like I said, I will definitely share all of this stuff with you guys. The presentations, you'll have the access to the links and stuff like that in the presentation. And thank you, House, for sharing that story. Looks like I got through everything. So now, what do I look at for raised hands options? Let's see here. Okay. All right. Lisa, go ahead. Oh, I think I might have to unmute you. Let me see here. No, I can't. I can't unmute you. So if you, Lisa, if you want to interject and ask question, that's totally fine. Anybody else, if you want to type in chat or speak up, that's cool too. Oh, there you go, Lisa. Go ahead. Oh,
People can you hear me, Danny? People can
yes,
unmute themselves.
yes, I can
Okay,
hear
then
you.
Lisa should be able to unmute herself. I don't have a question, but
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't unmute people for some reason. It just only gave me the option to unmute everyone before the stage. But Lisa, you can always feel free to type your stuff in chat as well if you're having trouble with the mute button.
oops.
Um, let's see here. How do you convince students? Courtney said, how do you convince students away from a dream school situation that has a gap if they think it will be worth it? Woo! You know, um, I would say when it came to the student who applied early decision and went to the fly-in and stuff like that, she definitely thought it was a dream school in her eyes, you know. And I think it wasn't just the one conversation that I had with mom and her about the gap in particular. It I also had to talk to her too, you know, and privately a couple of times to and also show her that hey, I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to understand why it's like this by talking to the school on the behalf of the student, and I think for her what was really helpful was breaking down the numbers, breaking down the job prospects, having students like her realize, even though college scorecard wasn't really a thing then, but I think having students see what starting salaries are like for particular majors at particular schools, you know, to really give them a view of can you actually this you might think this school might be worth it, but let's look at the numbers. Is it really worth it? You know, so um, that's what I was just gonna say. You know, really about that is like you gotta show them the numbers. You know, it show them that it might not add up for them. And you know, like I said, all you could do is just give them the information, right? I think a lot about. I actually saw it in the Heights yesterday, and I saw it. I saw the original Broadway play. I saw another run on Broadway. So I'm very big on In the Heights, and definitely the thing that stood out to me in the Heights as a college counselor is you're welcome, Cook. Take care. And was the dad selling his business to be able to be able to afford Stanford for his daughter. You know, um, that's that's the thing that you know. Uh, I think parents generally gonna want to have the instinct to do whatever they want to fully support their child, right? Um, um, but I think it helps to have us as mediators in between, you know. Um, and I think too that parents need to think about year two, year three, year four. Yeah, you can afford the school in the first year, but can you in year two, right? Like one thing I thought was like, all right, he sold his cab service. Boom, probably afford the second year. What happens year three? What happens year four? I just couldn't like get out of my head as a college counselor as I was watching the movie. Um, so I think that's the thing that's key. Is just like you know, can the student make it to graduation? And it's not just an academic issue; it's also a financial issue as well. Um, and I think too, I remember seeing stories about students uh, not be able to graduate, or not be able to start their senior year, for example, because they couldn't afford bills that are probably small to us but are big to them and their family, of like amounts of like $300. Um, so I think that's the thing that's key. You know, um, Davis shares, I was a first generation student who did everything wrong with taking out loans. I log into my student loan portals and show my students how much I owe now. Yikes! Versus what I originally borrowed. I've been out of college for 8 years. They were shocked at how much the interest accumulates. Yeah, I mean, if you feel comfortable enough with sharing students your own debt load, go ahead and do that for sure. I wish I had a debt load to show students, so they could see for themselves that it's not easy, to maintain, especially when I was living in New York, to maintain in New York. I remember when I graduated college and seeing studios for like $1,000 plus. Of course, they're a lot more now, but to me back then that was crazy. My first full time job, as I said before, which was a year after I graduated, was just only $30,000. So imagine living with $30,000 by yourself in New York City. Disaster. It was definitely living paycheck to paycheck. Then, I was literally I was telling my fiance the other day because I talk to her sometimes about student debt stuff and stuff like that. I said to myself, I graduated college. I mentioned I graduated college and I was spending like $200 on groceries. I was literally counting how much I was spending $200 on groceries per month, right? Barely any room for entertainment, barely any room to do anything else. There was even a point where I cut off cable to help save on some of the costs. Um, so yeah. It, da, da, da. If there isn't anything else, I definitely want to appreciate that. Oh, well, someone else chatted. It took me 20 years and 4 months to repay my student loan, undergrad student loans. I bought my first car ever when I was 38 because of that. So, um, we definitely want to let students know of these cautionary tales because it definitely puts your having student loans, master student loans, puts your life on pause. It really does, And um, you know, I think when I think of college, I think of uh, getting to the next level. Having your own place, potentially starting a family if that's what you want to do. Things like that. You're supposed to actually start getting your life in order when you graduate college. Um, how are you talking to students about this push for loan forgiveness? So here's the thing about the loan forgiveness. I was actually talking to my fiance about this the other day. There are articles out there that say, yeah, of course, the public service loan forgiveness, you pay it monthly for 10 years, et cetera, et cetera. Um, um, but I've seen articles saying people have a hard time getting approved for it, and all these other loopholes. Um, so the acceptance rate isn't as high as you would think. So I will always say to students and families in particular, now at this stage, is you can't really depend on um, the school, the state government, the federal government, your local government to do the right thing. You have to be smart about your choices from the get go, because let's think about loan forgiveness. That's supposed to be a part of the budget this year, and it wasn't. After the president campaigning on things like that, so we cannot depend on um, students, and we cannot depend on people to rescue us, right? We cannot depend on people to rescue our students and families. We have to help them prevent from being in some scenarios where they have to be rescued. Um, anything else, y'all? Great conversation. Um, now, if there isn't anything else, definitely feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions, comments, and uh, I will be sending out this deck pretty soon. I'm gonna see how this video recording stuff works. Hopefully, it worked out pretty well. Um, and it'll be up on my website. If not, then I'll just do a Loom and do it privately with no audience. But thank y'all for coming on out. Hopefully, oh, I meant to share other stuff too. I totally forgot. There was some other things I had up here. I'm gonna share. I'm gonna share those things pretty quickly. Because I thought someone was gonna ask me about um uh HBCUs, so I had something pulled up in advance. So these tabs are so out of order. I don't even know what is going on here. Let me find it. I should have just closed everything out. That's what I should have just did. But oh, this this chart here, I don't know what's not loading. I'll send it to you. I This chart here showed how students at HBCUs are borrowing a lot more than the average white student at predominantly white institutions and public institutions and what have you. Sadly, that's also reality too, and we have to prepare our students for that debt, by saying, hey, you want to go to a school like this? Here's the actual numbers. These are things that you need to do now. Apply to outside scholarships. Hopefully, you win some. Plan on being an RA. Find out if room and board is covered, et cetera, to be able to bridge the gap. There were some other things I was going to show too, but I'll also share those things later. I don't know why things aren't really loading right now, but thank y'all once again for coming on out. I really appreciate it, and I hope y'all take care. Peace.